All right, so we've talked about these marketing performance indicators, and we know them to be true, but how did we come to that point, and why are these the right ones to measure?
I've been fired off of those more times than I like to admit.
What do you mean by that?
The times I've high-fived myself for a 5, 6, 700% ROAS while the company slowly loses revenue every year is, years worth of that. So it's to the point where I found out that I was getting paid to be the only person celebrating in the room. And that's where I was like, okay, like that's probably where my imposter syndrome stems from. Is I'm like, no, like unless their bank account's bigger, I'm not celebrating anything. And come to find out, that's pretty much the only thing that really businesses care about. Honestly, if we're gonna be real about it, you've never been reprimanded, fired, talked to from a company, client, whatever it may be. Like in your success in your individual world, in the business world, has there ever been a time where you're like, hey, I have a horrible ROAS and they're minting money and they say, well, I guess you're fired? Like that's never actually happened, but the reverse always happens. It's like, look how good I'm doing for you. They're like, yeah, but my company's no longer working, so you're fired. Like that has always been the case. It's the truest form of success. Is my bank account smaller after you got here? It's very binary, very simple. So I think that those business performance metrics, if you don't measure them, I always say this as a joke, you're hired to be the company hitman. Like you're gonna get paid to hurt that company if you don't measure it properly. So that's why I think that's the truest form of we know them to be true, because at the end of the day, everyone kind of has to, regardless of how cool the report is that you deliver to your clients with how much you've succeeded in your success, if the client is failing, you've ultimately failed at the job. You've won the battle and lost the war. And that's why I think that these MPIs are the true North Star of any relationship vendor, of any, in-house. Doesn't matter. It's the true North Star of how is the marketing performing. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I think it's true because it's just it's like simple, it sounds like, I don't know, like it just sounds simple. Like I think people just forget. It's like, well, at the end of the day, it's a business. Like it's your business. And how am I measuring everything that is going on in my business? You can't silo each individual thing that you're doing for marketing, because then you're just going to sit there and constantly stress out because you're focused so much on each individual thing. But it's like, what is each individual thing bringing to my business, and how is my business growing because of those each individual things?
Yeah, and I think this kind of gets to another theme that is tier 11 and one of our core values, in that, we just do things that are best for the business, not for us, right? And that's measuring these MPIs, which don't necessarily make us look good, but it's best for the business. It's not having creative and traffic blame each other because they're not so focused on making themselves look good. They're just doing what's best for the client.
Man, the worst thing I've seen is when traffic strategy is not verified and is horrible, and the company's producing their own amazing creative, and the traffic people then blame the company. It's like, it's the funniest thing to watch from the outside in. I'm like, oh God, it's just the dumpster fire from the outside. It's like, oh man, that is, it's like the doctor being like, I diagnosed you wrong, so it's your fault.